NDC, our parliamentary candidates across the country, and our presidential candidates during the. And so, Almighty Father, we commit this program into your hands, and we ask and receive the grace for its success. More importantly, Father, we ask that you anoint the words of your servant, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who will be at his words. Bring comfort to the brokenhearted. Let his words bring encouragement to the disillusioned. And let his words bring illumination to all those who are in darkness about the true state of our country. Above all, Father, we ask that in your sight for the development, peace, and progress of our beloved country. And finally, we ask that his words, we shall give you the praise, the honor, and the adoration. In the mighty name of Jesus, we have prayed. And let everybody say amen.
Thank you very much, the prayerful Sami Jemfi. We are grateful for your prayers. For once, we were not doing politics with that, and we are grateful. Let me acknowledge the media. At the right time, I'm sure I'll mention you by names, but we are grateful. You have come in your numbers, and we know that you could always be our partner, and we appreciate it that you have made time to join us this evening. As we start the program this evening, let me introduce myself too. My name is Obobia Dakumpuku, and I'm the Deputy Communications Director for the National Democratic Congress. Next, I welcome to the microphone my sister, Mrs. Joyce Bawa Mukhtari, special aide to our former president and a private legal practitioner and a former Deputy Minister of Transport. Mrs. Joyce Bawa.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, my sister Obobia. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you all and welcome to this auspicious thank you evening. Kindly permit me first and foremost to welcome you on behalf of the 2020 presidential candidate of the National Democratic Congress, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and his vice presidential running mate, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, to this evening's Thank Ghana address. In less than 1 month, it will be a year since our beloved country, Ghana, witnessed its worst conduct of a general election in this Fourth Republic. We will be commemorating the bloodiest election in the history of our country, an election in which 8 innocent people lost their lives, including a young child. Not on the election day, but during the process of collation of the results of an election. This is an election that we in the National Democratic Congress believe, and many other Ghanaians believe same, that we won. As many of the chiefs, religious leaders, and ordinary Ghanaians publicly acclaimed during President Mahama's thank you tour, the people of Ghana can only share their compassionate love for our leader, a truly selfless individual, a politician who believes in the welfare not only of the people, but the future of this beautiful country. To lead a very large political party like ours and to accept to continue to do so is not necessarily an act that many are willing to undertake. And I believe that we all know that he even took us all the way to petition the Supreme Court. And like everybody else in this room witnessed, it was unfortunately not our day in court. And after all that, he agreed to lead this party once more on a thank you tour across the 16 regions of this country, calling for calm, calling for support, and thanking, of course, all of our supporters across the country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, President Mahama has once again demonstrated through his actions that the future of our party, the NDC, and of our beloved country, Ghana, means more to him than any other thing. If you were among those who asked yourself why we must all go thanking the good people of Ghana when he was not necessarily declared winner of the election, I believe you are more than convinced now that this decision was the best. It is yet another confirmation of the astute politician, the nation builder, and a great gentleman, John Dramani Mahama. And it is a great honor for me, on your behalf, ladies and gentlemen, to invite and welcome the former President of the Republic of Ghana, the NDC's only surviving former president, the man who many from across the 275 constituencies of Ghana, the over 33,000 branches and polling stations, and many Ghanaian voters say is the man who ought to have been declared winner of the last election, and who Ghanaians have come to accept and call the hard-working, decent gentleman, and of course look forward to him, to the glory of God, being inaugurated as president come January 7th, 2025. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I present to you one of Ghana's ultimate favorite politicians, the affable, the indefatigable, father, husband, brother, cousin, uncle, His Excellency, John Dramani Mahama. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the nation builder. John Mahama, is one with vision, a planner, and a master tactician. Here's a man with a team that understands that the implementation of free senior higher education, for example, requires adequate infrastructure in order not to destabilize an already working quality educational system. This is a man with a team that negotiates deals in a holistic manner, like the Tema Port Expansion Project that concluded with the construction of the Tema Motorway Interchange for ease of transport of goods. This is a nation builder, one who makes judicious use of resources at his disposal. There are several infrastructure projects in various sectors of the economy accounted for under John Mahama's 4 years of governance. This nation builder is trustworthy, one who is faithful to his promise. John Mahama promised to end Doomsor, and truly, he did, leaving the nation with excess megawatts of power at the end of his first term in office. This nation builder is a unifier. John Mahama's leadership transcends ethnicity, family, and friends. One whose message resonates with the upper class right through to the grassroots of our society. Same can be said about his communication prowess. It's unrivaled. This year's elections will be about track record. Second is trust. The writings are clear on the wall. The records never lie. Fellow Ghanaians, the choice is ours to make. Fellow Ghanaians, presenting John Dramani Mahama.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Good evening, my brothers, my sisters, ladies and gentlemen. As you just heard, I am John Dramani Mahama. I was born in Damango. I grew up in Accra and Tamale and spent my holidays in Damango. I schooled in Achimota in Tamale at a great Ghana school, Ghana Secondary School, and then Legon, and later did my postgraduate studies in the then Soviet Union, USSR. Along this journey, I have learned useful lessons from the school of life, the theater of rich, potent, and abandoned dreams. We were created in the image and likeness of God and given power to overcome adversity and defeats, particularly when we work in unity and with a common purpose. This unity and common purpose are needed if we want to transform our great nation Ghana into a sustainable economy underpinned by social justice. As Social Democrats, the National Democratic Congress, that is the NDC, believes and has always subscribed to a compassionate political philosophy that seeks to create opportunities for all to develop to their fullest potential, and not just a few people. The framers of our Constitution and national laws espoused these principles and directed our governments to bolster social justice through equitable, prudent, and sustainable allocation of our natural resources with the future generation in mind. Our governments must therefore lead the way in guaranteeing social justice. As citizens, we must not give up when our government shirks this responsibility. We must, in our own small way, keep hope alive by offering support to encourage each other. When a Ghanaian is in need, we must support him or her to rise up and walk. This promotes and sustains our common humanity. For me, the ethnicity, partisanship, religious affiliation, background, or gender of that Ghanaian in need does not matter and should not matter. The I am because you are spirit is not alien to the Ghanaian. We live and experience life as a community and not as individuals. Each day I become even more aware of our interconnectedness as a people with common hopes of prosperity, safety, and liberty for ourselves and our future generations. This fundamental lesson was evident in the contrasting lives I lived and found in Achimota, in Accra, in Tamale, and Damango. As Member of Parliament for Bole Bamboy, as Vice President, and as President, this guiding principle has always influenced my decision-making. Let me at this point thank you for joining me this evening as I give thanks to the Almighty God and to you, all Ghanaians, and the rank and file of the NDC for your prayers, your support, your encouragement, and perpetual guidance in my political career. I note that this audience here is drawn from a wide array of backgrounds, from high-flying professionals through to students, and to those who look forward to employment after having completed their education. This diversity notwithstanding, I believe we are all bound by a single strand woven around the desire to see our country prosper and develop in a manner that gives opportunities to all our people. It has been barely a year since Ghanaians went to the polls to elect a president and 275 members of parliament. Despite misgivings we had about the processes leading up to the election, we had reposed hope and confidence in what was a time-tested tradition of peaceful and fair elections since our democratic return in 1992. Our expectations proved to be misplaced, as the worst possible election in 29 years was delivered last year. The umpire of our elections, the Electoral Commission, for some reason chose to sacrifice the much heralded good image it had carved over the years. Our difficulties with the elections have been well documented, and I'll belabor the point if I recounted them here. Suffice it to say that the kind of violence that claimed the lives of 8 of our citizens, the misuse of security agencies to influence the outcome of elections in some constituencies, and the general uneven playing field that marred the 2020 elections should never be allowed to recur. We in the NDC have duly learned useful, if even bitter lessons from the entire episode. We're willing to engage the Electoral Commission in constructive dialogue with a view to addressing the clear shortfalls of our present electoral system and fashion out one that meets the expectation of all if we are to avoid the unfortunate incidents of 2020. We started this process by proposing a number of reforms to the electoral process, and we continue to carry out consultations with various stakeholders. We look forward to having an opportunity with the Electoral Commission to discuss these reforms and their possible implementation. Despite the disappointment of the loss, I deemed it appropriate to extend my appreciation and gratitude to Ghanaians who found me worthy enough to vote for in their millions. There were over 6.2 million people who, according to the officially declared results, spent time in long queues over a period of 10 hours to vote for me, deserve all the appreciation I can muster. Their show of support is a great source of encouragement for me and the great NDC which I led into the elections, that we have the trust of Ghanaians and that with the right approach, we will be victorious the next time round. That trust was also reflected in the spectacular gains we made in the parliamentary elections, in which we moved from 106 seats to 137 seats, marking an increase of 31. It is trite knowledge that but for the underhand maneuvering and misuse of security agencies to overturn the true outcome of results in several constituencies, we would be the majority in Parliament today. I acknowledge the participation of those who chose to repose confidence in our opponents and voted for them. I extend my thanks to them as well. Because their decision to exercise their franchise has left our democracy the richer for it. To give expression to my eternal gratitude to Ghanaians, I have in the last few months toured the length and breadth of this country to personally convey my thanks for this massive support. I've interacted with Ghanaians across the political and socio-economic divide and experienced the challenges that they are going through both in rural and urban communities. Throughout these interactions, one thing has become resoundingly clear, and it is that our country is not on the right path. We're clearly headed for a major ditch if immediate action is not taken to reverse the trend. I also asked, after listening to many of the people who spoke in these interactions, what we can do collectively to address the excruciating hardship and suffering confronting many a Ghanaian. The problem of our country are legion and hydra-headed. And as I distill from my interactions with the people of Ghana on this tour, the most pressing problem is the impact of the ailing economy on livelihoods, prospects, and dreams. The consequences of misguided priorities in economic management has led to unbearable hardship, high unemployment, and the frustration and despair felt by millions of our youth. Other concerns include the bastardization and politicization of state institutions, the mounting corruption, rising insecurity, abuse of power, lack of investment in critical infrastructure, and abandonment of projects and heavy-handed governance. The tragedy of our current national situation is that we have a government that appears completely unwilling to acknowledge the problems and even begin the process of addressing them. We're instead confronted with an administration that believes that these major problems can be wished away through public relations, sloganeering, divisive rhetoric, populism, and plain political deception. Take our present economic state, for example. At a time when everyone is crying out over the excruciating hardship brought on by excessive taxation, ever-increasing cost of living, weekly fuel price increases, this government chooses to recite a hackneyed mantra that there are indicators that show that the economy is doing well. Even if we were to overlook the mismatch between these claims and the very visceral suffering and pain people are going through in their daily life, it beggars belief that the same people saying this were only 6 years ago dismissing any linkage between the welfare of Ghanaians and economic indices. They said then that they had visited the markets and were not experiencing single-digit inflation prices in those markets as we would dictate. They insisted then that the best way to measure the strength or otherwise of the fundamentals of the economy was to look at the exchange rate, for its depreciation would expose the weakness therein. These days, however, even as the exchange rate depreciates to very worrying levels, they say, oh, the economic fundamentals are strong. Beyond these spirited linguistic acrobatics, the plain truth the plain truth, which we all see and feel, is that the Ghanaian economy is in deep crisis. At the micro level, we feel the heavy impact of a troubled economy when we go to the market and find prices of basic items rising with alarming rapidity. We also feel it when we go to the fuel station and find that the already high price of fuel has increased once again. We further feel it when our rents are increased, or when we get onto Trotro and find that fares have gone up because of increases in fuel prices. Importers feel the pinch because duty at the ports have become almost impossible to pay due to the amount of taxes slapped on them. The daily struggle of Ghanaians to make ends meet would be impossible to recount in one address. The question we ask, however, is how have things moved from bad to worse so quickly when we're promised a much better and more affordable standard of living? I would say this is the direct result of the mismanagement of the Ghanaian economy by its current managers. The present economic decline is even more shocking when viewed against the backdrop that this has been the most fortunate government in the history of Ghana in terms of the quantum of resources that it has received. After inheriting an economy that had made remarkable recovery from the shocks of a protracted energy crisis, commodity price falls, and much lower oil revenue, this government has brought this economy to its knees in ways that are totally unacceptable. In pursuit of a just and fair society, the NDC administrations of Professor John Evans Atta-Mills and my good self between 2009 and 2017 achieved inclusive progress in the face of intractable national challenges. The resultant effect of our work was a resilient economy that was projected to grow at 8% in 2017. And indeed, the economy did grow at 8% in 2017 as projected. We're focused on the management of the economy in its entirety and not just in mere econometrics. This desired outcome sprang from sound and comprehensive policies which included fiscal prudence and the building up of financial reserves. Unfortunately, this government has succeeded in squandering all the unprecedented opportunities it had and has plunged us into dire financial straits. The situation has become so grave that only last week, almost every credible international financial institution, including the Fitch rating agency, reported that Ghana has lost access to the international bond market. Indeed, this government was forced to abandon the issuance of a credit in green and social bonds due to very high and unsustainable public debt levels. This is a result of a total loss of confidence by the international market in the Ghanaian economy. They do not trust us to be able to meet our repayment obligations because our finances are in shambles. At the last reckoning, in the second quarter of this year, our total public debt stood at 334 billion Ghana cedis, representing a debt to GDP ratio of over 80%. And according to Fitch, this is set to rise in 2022 and reach 90% if no action is taken by 2023. This also means that the public debt has increased by 214 billion Ghana cedis from the 120 billion in January 2017. The debt to GDP ratio in January 2017 on the current rebased GDP was 56%. So how have we gone from 56% to almost 80% in 4.5 short years? Available data shows that Ghana's Eurobond debt of 13.2 billion is the third highest in sub-Saharan Africa. Expressed as a percentage of GDP, we have the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. That is, if you express the debt to GDP as a ratio of GDP, we have the highest in sub-Saharan Africa at a staggering 17.8% of our Eurobond debt. The consequence of this unbridled borrowing is that this year we'll spend over 35.8 billion Ghana cedis paying interest alone on our debt. Added, government must borrow more, and this will swell the public debt even further. International credit rating agencies have warned that if the situation does not improve, we could suffer further downgrades in our credit rating, and we could go as low as CCC for the first time in Ghana's history. Indications from government's own medium-term financial projections show that interest payments on our debt for the next year will reach over 40 billion, which will worsen an already very precarious situation. The debt overhang has been exacerbated by an unprecedented budget deficit of 15.6% and a primary deficit of 8%, including energy sector and financial sector payments recorded in 2020. The primary deficit is the clearest indicator of fiscal indiscipline. This extraordinarily large deficit needs to be financed through further borrowing. It was in a desperate effort to raise revenue to meet these obligations after squandering all the resources generated that government imposed a tall list of taxes in the 2021 budget, which have inflicted severe pain and suffering on Ghanaians. In effect, they punish Ghanaians for their own mishandling of the economy. The pain and suffering that these taxes have brought, leading to the rampant increases in prices of goods and services, stem directly from the gaping hole in our finances occasioned by the reckless election-related expenditure of 2020. The government has attempted to conceal its appalling incompetence and recklessness in the management of the economy with the COVID-19 pandemic. While the pandemic posed a major challenge to the global economy, including ours, it is quite clear in our case that it was the desire to win elections at all costs that got the government to engage in unbudgeted consumption expenditure to create an artificial feel-good factor before election 2020. It is this overspending that led to the very large deficit that has undermined the economy and left us in this parlous shape. Data from our neighbors and other comparative countries in sub-Saharan Africa who were also ravaged by the same COVID-19 clearly shows that almost all of them kept their economies within manageable limits and have not been thrown into economic crisis that Ghana finds itself in today. Let me begin with Cote d'Ivoire, which was President Akufo-Addo's favorite comparator to Ghana in the run-up to 2016. He was always very happy to compare Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. COVID-19 did not affect us any more extraordinarily than it did Cote d'Ivoire. Yet, their budget deficit for 2020 was 5.9%. And their debt to GDP ratio stands at 45.7%. Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Niger, and others have deficits below 7%, while their debt to GDP is nowhere near the 80% that Ghana has recorded. The undeniable effects of COVID-19 notwithstanding, it is evident from the above that the government placed the inordinate desire to win elections above prudent economic management. And that is why Ghanaians are going through so much suffering now. Long before COVID-19 struck, red flags had emerged, signaling mismanagement of the economy. We drew attention to this, but no corrective action was taken. Among these were the deliberate underreporting of the deficit through creative accounting, under which some of the expenditure items, especially in the energy and financial sectors, were treated as amortization items to artificially understate the deficit numbers. Another problem was the mortgaging of key statutory funds for borrowing, which was not reported as part of the national debt. Funds which we created, such as the GET Fund, the Road Fund, ESLA, among others, have all been collateralized for borrowing over several years. ESLA, for instance, has been extended to 2035. And so it will be a key part of our petroleum price build-up from now to 2035. It cannot be taken off. And when ESLA was introduced, it was introduced for a 5-year period to pay off legacy debts. All this was meant to lull us into a false sense of security that our debt was lower than it actually was. A serious fallout is that the intended purposes for setting up these funds has been derailed. Coupled with the capping and realignment policies of this government, the sectors they are supposed to be fund have been left completely hamstrung. For instance, let's take the District Assembly's Common Fund. The District Assembly's Common Fund is in arrears of about 4 quarters, making it impossible for any meaningful development projects to be done in the districts. Education, infrastructure, and road construction have also been in very short supply because these funds have been so heavily encumbered. Also, government's failure to settle arrears owed to contractors and suppliers, which have been grossly understated, has added to the crisis. The 2021 budget reported arrears of 8.2 billion, out of which provision was made for only 3.7 billion. We do know, however, that total arrears accumulated at the Ministry of Finance and other MDAs is about 30 billion. The rippling effects of this cash crunch has reverberated through many sectors of our national life. Take the education sector, for instance, where students of colleges of education have spent just 3 months in school out of the entire year because government has been unable to give the authorities money to run the schools. At the second cycle level, this cash crunch has led to an erratic academic calendar and uncertainty as students are sent home and recalled at irregular intervals. At the basic level, government has not been able to provide textbooks based on the new curriculum. For 2 straight years, no textbooks based on the new curriculum. forcing authorities to revert to the old curricula, which was supposed to be outdated. The present economic situation has fueled talk among credible financial institutions and analysts, both local and foreign, of an IMF program to restore investor confidence in the economy. Who would have thought that the arch opponents of IMF programs in the immediate past will now find themselves in a situation where an IMF program will be recommended as a way out of the terrible economic mess in which they have left this economy? I had stated when we went to the IMF in 2014 with economic indicators and an environment that were much better than we have today, that it was going to be our last such program, because we were confident that our homegrown fiscal consolidation program, which won the confidence of investors, brought stability back to the economy and laid the foundations for the earlier gains, and that this administration would be sustained and mistakes of the past would be avoided. The reality today is that despite all the gains we made, which will be bequeathed to the current administration, including revenue from 2 additional oil fields, and all the resources they have received, totaling in excess of 400 billion Ghana cedis in the last 5 years, our country is virtually bankrupt today. Many have wondered what has become of all the claims of supposed competence and know-how in economic management by those. There are indications that the budget, which is expected to be read next week, that there's only so much that they're already over our households. The very high cost of living will go through the roof. What happened to the mantra of from taxation to production under the heavy weight of existing taxes? This have characterized the spending of taxes on the avoidable creature comforts of the president's sensitivity to the plight of the suffering of the mass of millions of Ghana at the time. At a time when the state of Ghana has a fully fixed, I used that aircraft. Professor Mills used that aircraft. For the first 9 months of 2019 alone, constituted, if you ask people to tighten their belts, human sensibilities of the people, resources entrusted into this kind of waste was avoided. Significant resources could be saved to address some of the more pressing concerns. And the sale of our bonds is not due to Sam Jatta George. Don't blame Sam Jatta George for the loss of confidence in our bonds. And this is putting further pressures that we have what it takes to turn the situation around. The critical decisions that must be taken to save the economy from imminent catastrophe must be guided solely by what is prudent and in the national interest, and not what the explosion in unemployment. The specter of tens of thousands of frustrated and desperate young men and women running and falling over themselves to apply for very limited positions in security agencies, as we have recently seen, is most heartbreaking and deeply disturbing. Unemployment, somebody says it's a pandemic. I agree with you. Here too, the government's approach has been one of nonchalance and the bandying about of dubious employment creation figures. The tens of thousands of NAPCO recruits with virtually no hope of finding sustainable employment. At the core of our message to the people of Ghana in 2020 was jobs, because the unemployment issue was stuck, and that is why we made jobs the central pillar of our manifesto for the 2020 elections. From all the pillars of our policy planks in the People's Manifesto, infrastructure for growth, fixing the economy, tax cuts for jobs, developing a digital, functional economy, among others, our focus was on jobs and prosperity for all. Indeed, that was the slogan. But for the actions of the Electoral Commission and the subsequent verdict of the Supreme Court, an NDC administration would probably have been in place today. And the implementation of our various people-centered policies would have provided you and all of us better conditions of living than we are seeing today. Unemployment continues to plague our country, and it is clear this government has no sustainable plan to address it. The Bosch-NAPCO experiment has proven not to be the pathway and the means to an end. We need to come together and face youth unemployment head-on. And I have said previously that we are prepared to cooperate with government to go into a jobs and youth employment summit so that we can all bring our ideas to bear in easing the problem that our youth face. The NDC's 1 million Ejumapa jobs creation plan, the free technical vocational education and training and national apprenticeship programs as contained in our manifesto are still relevant and available for this government to draw on for implementation. We will not take any copyright fees. If well implemented, we can create an average of 250,000 jobs every year for the young people of Ghana. In our manifesto, we also provided plans to make Ghana a 24-hour economy with 3 shifts of 8 hours each. Our plan was to aggressively diversify our economy, provide more public sector jobs, enhance productivity, and add value to our products for export. This would answer Goal 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals, that is decent work and economic growth. When I recently addressed the African Economic Congress, I urged Africa to engage and incentivize technology companies to focus on neglected areas and sectors that will impact the lives of our people, such as agribusiness and health. Further encourage fintech companies to show more differentiation and diversification instead of the seeming over-concentration on creating only payment platforms that are high yielding today. I believe, for example, that telemarketing and online internet shopping will continue to offer opportunities for our youth in the distribution value chain. These are not things that I talk about in a vacuum. They are well thought through and structured solutions ready for implementation. On pages 41 and 42 of the abridged version of the 2020 People's Manifesto, we have laid out comprehensively how a digitally functional economy will be developed, among others, build on the infrastructure needed, train and create jobs, ensure expanded financial inclusion, introduce next generation agriculture, cybersecurity, among others. To further reduce the burden of unemployment, this government has a unique opportunity in the 2022 budget statement to lessen the tax burden on small and medium-scale businesses. They must be allowed to grow, to become more innovative and expand their employment generation capacity. While I'm aware of the tempting desire for government to amass massive revenues for their untempered consumption-driven appetite, I need to caution that we must not kill the hen that lays the golden egg. In this process, it has become evident that the current approach in public financial management has failed and needs to be reconsidered. It has also become evident that the private sector needs support to help resolve the troubling levels of joblessness in this country. Ghanaian companies have proven that when they're giving the needed push, they will thrive, flourish, and employ more. We tried it with a $20 million injection in pharmaceutical companies, Tobinco, NS Chemist, Danex, Dan Adams, and Kinafama, to expand production and provide jobs, and it worked. Such a stimulus package to viable Ghanaian entities in targeted sectors can be adopted under the current circumstances to induce growth and enhance the employment generation capacity of these selected firms. The Ghana Exim Bank must be redirected in its financing more towards agribusiness. Farmers and agribusiness in fishing, poultry and livestock, cashew, cocoa, palm oil, cotton, seed cotton, and rubber, etc., are in dire need of financial support to expand, take advantage of emerging local and international markets, and contribute to employing more labor. Public sector workers have proven over the years to be critical partners in national development. Perhaps this explains why it continues to attract many job seekers. I disagree with the oft-repeated position that the public sector is full and has no more room for people. The human resource gap analysis study we conducted on the public sector last year in preparation of our manifesto revealed very wide gaps and shortages in specific segments of the public sector. The Ghana Education Service and the Ghana Health Service have human resource gaps of almost 100,000 people. That is, the actual figure is 98,650. More people are needed to fill the CHIPS compounds, the hospitals, the polyclinics, to fill the schools. You still go to schools and you have one teacher teaching class 1 to class 6. And so there are gaps in education and health. Similar gaps were also identified in the security services. And so this human resource gap analysis shows that there's more space for employment, especially if we can keep frivolous expenditure down. In the security services, Ghana Police Service resource gap was 35,000 and 20 more needed to ensure the security of this nation. Ghana National Fire Service requires another 30,136 personnel. Ghana Immigration Service requires another 3,522. And the Ghana Prison Service, from our human resource gap analysis, requires almost another 8,000 personnel. And so, if we can balance our expenditure and get rid of the wasteful expenditure, we get rid of corruption, we should be able to bring more young people into our public services. What is lacking are innovative strategies of financing these human resource gaps. The time has come for the government to bite the bullet and take the bull by the horn. Many of these sectors can be made self-financing to improve the capacity to employ. Once they are allowed to use portions of their internally generated funds instead of depending solely on the consolidated fund, they should be able to create more employment. Similarly, the informal sector, which includes the creative arts industry, sports, also deserve attention. Sports and creative arts are powerful, life-changing endeavors. Azuma Nelson, 20-year-old Samuel Techi of Tokyo, 2020 fame, Abedi Pele, Professor Francis Dodu, Adjoa Bayo, the late Nana Kwame Mpedu, Amachi Dede, Kojo Impi, modern-day musicians and actors, Shatawale, Stoneboy, Sarkodie, and all the artists, actors, and actresses have transformed their lives and that of their families and their communities using their talents. Governments must always keep in mind that their trade can only be enhanced if and only if the appropriate infrastructure and enabling environment is created for them. After all, traders at our various food markets need good roads to cart farm produce from the farm gate to the market to sell and make an income. While importers like my friends at Abosoka need a favorable exchange rate regime and a reduction in taxes at the ports for these businesses to thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, let me quote for you a paragraph from the NDC's 2020 People's Manifesto, and it reads, Ghanaians need new opportunities for the development of their talents and skills. Transitioning from the current economic model to a knowledge-based economy will provide exactly that. For me, if a government must commit future generations to a financial obligation, then a substantial portion of the funds should be used for projects that can generate income to pay back the debt, or the funds must be directed towards public investment expenditure, CAPEX, that future generations can benefit from. The difference is very clear. If you compare our record to the current trajectory this government is on, we could also have opted for the short-term convenience of capping numerous statutory allocations, but decided against it because of our focus on equitable and sustainable growth. I've heard various reports about attempts to access the Ghana Heritage Fund by this administration to support the annual budget. That cannot be. And that should never be. I do hope that these are just speculations we are hearing. If the government has decapitated over 90% of the petroleum revenue inflows, what is a meager 8% in the Heritage Fund going to help them and do for them? The Stabilization Fund and the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, both of which were established during my period as president, have served Ghana well and can serve Ghana well. Let me recognize the contribution of my senior policy advisor, Dr. Valerie Sawyer, and the Venerable Atua Ahoy for their tireless efforts towards the setting up of especially the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Additional oil revenues, which came on stream from the Sankofa ENI fields, the TEN field, and the energy sector levy, should have provided sufficient revenue to retire most of the legacy debts in the energy sector and strengthen the banking sector. We would have avoided the reckless and deliberate collapse of Ghanaian-owned banks, the massive job losses, and the many adverse socio-economic impacts that have been associated with this unfortunate endeavor. My beloved brothers and sisters, the singular effect of this botched banking regulatory action on consumer and business confidence will impact this country for a long while to come. I'm proud that as president and in conformity with our traditional way of doing things as a true Ghanaian, consensus building, our administration strengthened the consensual approach to policy building. We reached across party lines and accepted criticism in good faith. We did not hound journalists and civil society organizations for aggressively criticizing us, even if we disagreed with their approach or their viewpoints. Most of you will remember the Sinchi Forum that had an audience of prominent talents from opposing political groups and from across the nation. Another key plank of our administration strategy was transparency in our public financial management system and in our national discourse. The opacity within our current national discourse about economic indices undermines our collective progress. Debates about the true state of the nation, its debt levels, exchange rate trajectory, or even growth numbers underpin the need for strong institutions that cannot be subverted by individual preferences. Under the Ghana Integrated Financial Management Information System, which we popularly call GIFMIS, we implemented best practice control system to improve accountability in public financial management. We plan to pick up from where we left off. We also promulgated the Public Financial Management Act to align our fiscal management practices with international standards. While strengthening the economy for sustainability, our government further had our eyes firmly on growth and productivity. We did not believe we could recklessly borrow our way out of underdevelopment. A major hindrance to mobilizing sufficient resources to fund our development is corruption. We have in recent times witnessed acts of corruption, cronyism, and decadence that lower the pedigree and reputation of the office of the president. not forgetting the dubious and opaque Ejapa gold royalty issues, which this government is still hankering after with plans of executing and hosting in a foreign tax haven. I must at this point recognize the nationalistic truth and outpouring of sentiments of many Ghanaians by the Catholic Bishops' Conference on Monday. Until we are bold to reflect what we are all experiencing under this government, the situation will continue to worsen. And we're all going to be the worse off for it. Ladies and gentlemen, civil servants, doctors, nurses, teachers, businessmen, women, traders, farmers, drivers, and the teeming unemployed youth of Ghana. This government is our common national tragedy. We may yet have to endure these very difficult times for a while longer due to a combination of factors. But I come to you this evening with a simple message. Do not, out of avoidable hardship and difficulties, despair to the point of losing hope and giving up on Ghana. Do not lose hope. Instead, I urge you to hope and work hard for a better Ghana and a better future under a new administration in 2025. I'm talking about a future where your name, your ethnicity, your tribe, your circumstances of birth will not determine how you are treated in your own country by your own government of the Volta region. And I stand this evening to assure the people of the region and the nation at large that all successive NDC administrations will continue to be national and people-centered ones. Not a future where the president of our country, so that in his traditional area, started under the previous administration, will not be treated. A future where state institutions will not astronomically increase admissions to the Ghana law system, only to turn around a year after the elections to deny access to him to have passed the entrance examinations. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the issues the government wants you to ignore and forget. Will take away the excruciating hardship Ghanaians are enduring under this government, including independent constitutional bodies and the security apparatus to be mindful of their mandate to the Constitution and the people of Ghana. They should not yield to pressure to become agents of oppression, and the tools our country, Ghana, will be liberated. And they should seek to be on the favorable side of history. Application of enhanced computer systems in our workflows, practices, and lifestyles is being in by words or huge catchy phrases, packed at cost-effective levels. That is what matters. It is quite amusing, though, that even as the economy faces these severe challenges requiring urgent action, those who have been responsible for the mess that we find ourselves in have overnight IT champions, commitment to social justice and equity. We also deployed 4G LTE technology with 120 base stations across the country and built a Tier 3 national data center with a 600 rack space data center in Accra and a 45 rack space backup in Kumasi. It is important, security and analytics. In simple terms, without the underlying infrastructure, systems and applications cannot talk to each other to support this and procedures